I'm Elaine Reyes at the CCTV UN Bureau at United Nations headquarters in New York. And this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
It's about a conversation between all generations in which we need young people to be at the table.
Putting a focus on younger generations.
It's really about how we continue to create continuous process for young people to be involved.
Working to create new opportunities for the leaders of the future.
Free the young people, to let young people strive, to let the potential of young people be multiplied.
A look at the UN's efforts to embrace the future. Next.
Young people between the ages of 15 and 24 make up 16% of the global population. By 2030, youth population is expected to grow by 7%. The UN is increasing its focus on younger generations as it looks to evolve for the future. In this special episode of UN Insider, we'll look at the ways young people are making their mark on the United Nations and the world.
When youth are empowered, trusted and funded, major breakthroughs that will shape our world to solve the challenges of today and the challenges of tomorrow is a guarantee.
That's Amani Joel Mafigi, one of the many young leaders taking advantage of opportunities to raise their voices at the UN. In 2018, the UN launched Youth 2030, a strategy to expand youth participation in the UN system. Since then, 55 UN bodies have adopted the plan, working to incorporate more young voices on global issues, from conflict and climate to education and technology.
It's about a conversation between all generations in which we need young people to be at the table and really being present in the conversation and in the discussion.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also stressed the importance of youth participation in his efforts to reform the UN for the future.
One of the key reforms that needs to be done, that need to be implemented at all levels, is to free the young people, to let young people strive, to let the potential of young people be multiplied.
I think we are all clear that we are seeing the phases of change. Young people from every corner of the world who refuse to accept the status quo. You are here because you know that the challenges we face cannot be solved without you.
The African continent is home to the youngest population on Earth. An estimated 70% of sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 30. So creating opportunities for those young people is a key focus. I asked Christina Duarte about the push for more science and technology education on the continent. She is the UN Secretary General's Special Advisor on Africa.
We reach a point in Africa where science, technology, innovation needs to become organic, needs to enter our DNA. Let me give you the example of the 18 million jobs that Africa needs to create on an annual basis. Do you know what is the best job creator in Africa? It's not the state. It's not the private sector. It's the youth, African youth. 95% of youth employment are informal employment. Who creates employment in Africa? Young people themselves. Not the state, not the private sector. So we need to approach this as a mutual responsibility, where a division of labor needs to be decided, so each one understands its role. STEM is a critical piece for the state to build the ecosystem. I used to say that so far STEM has been serving as a gourmet. No, it should be the main course. We should deliver STEM as long as we have Wi-Fi. We need to to scale it up in Africa. We need to increase in a massive way STEM education. Move of this perception of being gourmet, maybe only in private school, and to make it the main course.
Young people from around the world made their voices heard here at the UN on a range of issues. Here are a few young leaders speaking about some of the world's most pressing concerns.
In Botswana, we have Drones for Africa and Kapula Drones, who are an asset to food security by helping large-scale traditional farmers to keep track of their crops and to ensure that there's better production. This is such a beautiful way of actively contributing towards food security in the country. And as a country, we wish to realize the SDGs, and we appreciate the power of a young person with a phone, a young person with a laptop, and a young person with connectivity as essential to realizing our goals.
We, especially us, young people, need to shift the narrative. We need to put a spotlight on our peers, on the young technicians, the coders, the builders, the people who make things run, make things work. Because when young people see pride and value in every career path, when society values every career path, then we're not just solving unemployment. We are unlocking potential and creating a better future for our young people.
Coming up.
We're living in a world where half of the world's population is under 30.
UN Insider.
Whether it's about your education, the home you live in, or the items you buy, your money has a story to tell. Because every business story is a human story. Global Business.
"2025 marks the 30th anniversary of the UN's World Program of Action for Youth. It outlines 15 priority areas. So how is the United Nations encouraging more youth engagement? I sat down with Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, Felipe Paulier. Felipe, young people from across the globe recently came here to UN headquarters in New York to share their recommendations about sustainable change, science, social inclusion. Tell us more about this year's Youth Forum and what you heard.
Yes, as you mentioned, very recently we had the 13th ECOSOC Youth Forum, which is one of the largest gathering of young people in relation to the United Nations and the intergovernmental processes of the UN, with a big focus this year on sustainable development. We had more than 1,000 young leaders from different countries of the world coming here, more than 60 ministers coming from ministries of youth and education and different parts of different governments. And this year, I think it was special because in a very complex moment for multilateralism. And I think we need to be very honest that we're facing an unprecedented crisis for multilateralism. I think that the message was very important. The message coming from governments in terms of support to the UN as a platform when it's about addressing global challenges, and especially the message from young people trusting in the UN as a platform for them to be engaged with the change. I think now it's really about us. I think I was reflecting in one of the activities of the ECOSOC Youth Forum, and I was reflecting about the message young people are giving us, institutions, about their interest, their willingness to be part. And it's really about how, from an institutional perspective, we continue to create more spaces such as the ECOSOC Youth Forum. I think the forum is definitely a good example of a platform for young people to be part, but it's not enough. It's not enough to have once a year a big forum in New York. It's really about how we continue to create continuous process for young people to be involved, and not only at the global level. I think this comes also how national governments are implementing these kind of platforms on their reality, trying to create opportunities for young people to be part. And I think that's the only real way to be able to address the current challenges we're facing.
I mean, there is so much happening around the world, but we're also feeling the impacts of climate change. I mean, there's a lot of conflict everywhere you look. So when you're talking to the young people, do they believe that multilateralism is something that will help them as they continue on in their roles in building their communities?
I strongly believe that young people are our biggest allies to reshape the new multilateral system, But this process needs multiple things to happen, And I think that at the center of this issue of participating, there's an issue in relation to trust, and you will trust in something if you are able to participate, and at the same time, your participation will make you trust on this platform, And I think that the real change needs to come more from an institutional perspective than really from young people. Young people are ready to be part of this, They are already implementing transformations and changes on their communities, And what they are doing, it's fully aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and our common agenda, It's really about how we continue to implement platforms such as the ECOSOC Youth Forum, which is not the only one, You were speaking about climate, and behind and in the process of any of the COP, processes, the conferences of the parties, in relation to climate change, there's always a big youth participation part, and they are doing their part. Every year before a COP, they are organizing regional conferences, local conferences, and this is fully a youth-led process, They don't receive any funds from anyone. They are fundraising to make these platforms real, and it's really about how then, from an institutional perspective, we create those channels for this participation to be part of the formality, And I think that in this central matter of how we can create, a real and a meaningful participation of young people in decision making, is where we are going to be able to have a multilateral system that really it's able to deliver to the current challenges, And that was the core and one of the core pillars of the Pact for the Future. I think we have now this opportunity, and I think that any crisis is also an opportunity, and I hope that this crisis is an opportunity to put this pact into practice, I think we have a clear route, where we need to go, and in this route, we need to put young people in the center.
You are the first Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, and you sort of straddle this line because you're part of the UN system, but you also are talking and engaging with young people around the world. Do you feel like their voices are being heard at the table? Are they being taken seriously when they're in leadership positions? Do you see more young people leading inside the United Nations?
So I think we need to be very honest with ourselves and to recognize that we have a long way to go. I'm the youngest senior appointment in the history of the United Nations in 80 years, and I'm the only one under 45, if I'm not wrong, in the organization at certain level, While at the same time we're living in a world where half of the world's population is under 30, and we're seeing young people leading at many levels of the society, leading change in the real activity, in their day-to-day activities. But at the same time, I think we need to see where we are coming from, And if we compare where we are now with 15 years back, we've made progress. I think the establishment of the Youth Office is clearly a recognition of the importance of the youth participation for the future of the organization. It's a political commitment, because our office was established by all 193 governments, you know, and that's a very important step, you know. I think it's very clear that in terms of moving forward, it's not only about the UN internal reforms, it's really about the UN as a platform where we create also global narratives, you know. And I think that the challenge we are facing internally in the UN is not only a problem of the UN. If we go, for example, to the average age of parliamentarians in the world, you know, only 3% of parliamentarians in the world are under 30 years old, you know, and only 1% if we're talking about young women in parliaments, you know. This is clearly not going side by side by the demography and the situation of the world. But even if we go to the private sector, you know, statistics also show that the average age of CEOs in the S&P 500 is also around 60, you know, if I'm not wrong. So it's not only a problem of the UN. I think it's a problem of the status quo of decision making. And in terms of how to address this gap, I think it's really about creating platforms for meaningful participation. The truth is that the solutions won't be the same at every level. The solutions for the UN are different than the solutions for for local governments or national governments, or the solutions to think into the private sector or even into parliaments, as I was speaking. But I think the whole dimension of how from institutions we create these paths for young people to be part is crucial if we want also to build trust in the system we have, you know.
Coming up,
any opportunity we have open for young people to participate, young people are showing that they want to be part of this.
UN Insider.
Modern vitality, born of ancient civilizations. Asia exemplifies diversity in its best sense and welcomes changes at the fastest pace. Asia Today brings you the headlines from the most populous continent, puts in focus politics, economies, and faces, and takes you on a tour of the sights from the region and beyond.
The health and well-being of the world's youth is a special concern for the UN's Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, and he's drawing more attention to mental health challenges. Let's continue my conversation with Felipe Pollier. You are also a doctor, a medical doctor, a pediatrician, in fact. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Global Youth Mental Health Awareness Project? Mental health is something that you've championed for a very long time, long before you have been in your current position.
Yes, for sure, and I think you're bringing into a conversation for me one of the most complex and emerging challenges we're facing as a global humanity, you know. And I don't think we only need to consider the dimension of well-being and the mental health only of young people. I think this is a global topic, you know, that affects every age group of our society, and that it's a challenge in every country of the world, you know. This is not only a problem in a certain group of countries, you know. There's clear data that is showing that we're having big challenges on this matter, you know. Suicide is the third cause of death. The COVID made a huge impact in a whole generation, you know, having peaks of almost 25% of young people during the first year of COVID with anxiety or depression issues. And at the same time, we're seeing that the response is not being sufficient, you know. We only have half of governments, half of countries implementing, for example, preventive approaches for mental health in schools, you know. And I think that when we look at the role of our office, you know, of course it's about how to create the transformations within how the UN works for young people and with young people. It's about how we can work with governments also to advance their commitments when it's about working for and with young people. But it's also about how we can use our office to put on the table those topics that are not being addressed with a sufficient importance, you know. And that's what we are willing to do with this mental health flagship initiative. We know, and I've seen this with my own eyes, how the UN is in the ground working on this matter. You know, I've been in Guatemala seeing how IOM is supporting the government of Guatemala in terms of the response to migrants in relation to mental health and well-being. I know very closely the example of Uruguay, where I know how UNICEF is working with the national government implementing preventive programs in terms of mental health for adolescents and young people. I've been in Thailand learning about how UNDP has been working in terms of creating more innovative policies to address this matter. And I think that what we are clear is that there's no sufficient attention at the global level to this matter, you know? And we're only sometimes discussing these topics with a very specific and very special lens, you know? We're talking about mental health only with the lens of non-communicable diseases and mental health diseases. And I think what we want to do, really, championing this agenda, is first respond to a demand from young people, you know? In every consultation in the last years, mental health is always one of the first 3 concerned topics by young people, you know? And this is coming from across regions. This is not coming only from special countries. We've seen that we need also to bring a holistic approach to this matter, you know? We're talking about well-being of young people. This is a cross-cutting issue that has to do with a medical dimension, but also it's related to access to education. It's also related to the impact of social media in our lives. It's also related to the access we have to opportunities in relation to jobs, you know, and the job market. And at the same time, I think for us, what is very clear is that we need to put this at the highest level of decision-making in this organization. And that's what we are willing to do. And we strongly believe that the only way to move this topic is to build partnerships across different stakeholders, you know. So we are working with a strong approach on having meaningful youth participation at the center of how to bring this discussion to a highest level, but also understanding that we need to build coalitions with civil society, with the private sector, with governments, and of course with the UN. As I mentioned, we are doing a lot at the country level. How we can bring all these efforts at the global level, that's what we are trying to do.
2025 is a big year here at the United Nations, 80 years since its founding. And the theme for this anniversary is building the future together. What is the role of younger generations when you put these words together, future and together?
So, as you said, no, in this very complex scenario, you know, marked by conflicts, you know, and last year was the year with the highest amount of conflicts active since the Second World War. So since this organization was established. At the same time, we are facing, you know, geopolitical tensions that definitely are affecting, you know, the global platform that the UN represents. But as our Secretary General emphasized, you know, the UN has never been more necessary, you know. But the truth is that we need to be conscious that we cannot continue to be doing the same than 8 years back, you know. And the truth is that the UN has evolved and has changed, you know, in a positive way across these 8 years. But I think that maybe the biggest opportunity we have, if we really want to continue to be a future fit organization, as this has always been, and also an organization that is able to bring our diversity together on common goals is to really build this with the agency of young people, you know? And as we were talking at the very beginning, you know, any opportunity we have open for young people to participate, young people are showing that they want to be part of this, you know? You know, the apathy of young people to participate in political dynamics, it's a myth, you know? It's really about how we create those structures for it to happen. And I think that in these 80 years, in this 80th anniversary of the United Nations, if I have to say where we need to put the focus is on this Pact for the Future that governments, after several negotiations, decided to approve, you know? And we have in that pact the most, you know, innovative approach for change, which is the inclusion of young people in the processes we held. And I think that if we are able to put this into action, then we are going to be able to continue to be what this organization was founded for, you know, to be that common house, you know, where in our diversity we build common goals and we make the changes for the future.
Assistant Secretary General Felipe Poilier, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Elaine.
From the CCTV UN Bureau at United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Elaine Reyes. Thanks for being a UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is a special edition of UN Insider.
UN Insider serves as an important window for the global audience to better understand multilateral diplomacy.
It's very important for the media to cover the United Nations, to seek to understand and tell the story in ways that the average person in the street can understand.
I think it's very important that the media should contribute to conveying important messages about the reality of today's challenges.
UN Insider has come to the UN, and we at the UN are so grateful to have it here. It is the only dedicated TV program to what is happening in the UN, and it is reaching so many people with, as it says in its title, Inside the UN Stories.
Media plays an important role in providing objective information across the world.
We think that media has a strong power of uplifting, you know, what we are trying to convey as messages as developing countries.
We need the mobilization of all peoples, of whole government and whole of society, and media can help us to be informed so that we also can make our part.
I think the media is fundamental to enable citizens across the world, first of all, to understand what is the rationale of having the United Nations. It's not that there is one place on planet Earth that will tell the rest of the world what to do. It is a much more complex story.